Imagine for a second that you basically work 50 or 60 hours a week for 40 straight years.
Hmm.
You skip the big family vacations, you put off learning at a sail, you drive a beat-up car, and you save absolutely every spare penny you can scrape together.
Right, the classic American dream kind of setup.
Exactly. And then you finally arrive at your 75th birthday. You pull up your bank account, and there are literally millions of dollars sitting there. You won the game.
Yeah, you crossed the finish line.
But when you stand up from your chair, your knees ache so badly that the idea of, walking around Paris for a week sounds like torture. And frankly, you just don't have the energy to sail a boat anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scenario that plays out literally every single day. And yet, it completely goes against everything we consider to be responsible financial behavior.
Right.
We are handed this incredibly rigid cultural script, basically the moment we get our first paycheck. And it tells us that the ultimate goal in life is just to build the absolute biggest nest egg possible.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are doing a deep dive into some source material that completely shatters that traditional rule book. We're looking at concepts from The Art of Dying with Zero.
It's a really fascinating perspective.
It really is. And our mission here is to explore a genuinely shocking, almost heretical question. Like, what if the absolute biggest financial mistake you can make isn't spending too much, but actually saving too much?
Which just sounds so wrong when you first hear it.
It does. It feels
Yeah.
so wrong.
Yeah.
But I want to be really clear right out of the gate here. We are not talking about aiming for zero happiness or zero memories or, zero security.
Right, right.
The paradox we're exploring today is about aiming for zero unnecessary money.
That distinction is so crucial because when you first hear the phrase, dying with zero, it immediately raises the hackles of anyone who has ever dutifully put a portion of their paycheck into a retirement account.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels inherently reckless, right? We are biologically and culturally wired to just hoard resources for the winter. But as we go through these notes, we are going to look really deeply at the underlying logic behind this philosophy.
Because it forces you to look at things differently.
Exactly. We really need to question our most basic assumptions about the relationship between our money, our time, and what actually constitutes a well-lived life.
So, to really wrap our heads around why aiming for zero makes any logical sense at all, I think we have to start by dismantling this deeply ingrained idea that the source material calls the biggest retirement myth.
Oh, the someday trap.
Yes, the someday trap. It's this widespread belief that you're supposed to basically sacrifice your 20s, your 30s, and your 40s entirely to fund your 60s and 70s.
Right. Just think about the psychology behind that myth for a second. People willingly skip adventures, they delay lifelong dreams, and they ignore their current desires because they are constantly deferring to this mythical golden future.
A future that honestly is not guaranteed.
Exactly. Statistically speaking, they may never actually experience that future. And even if they do reach that financial finish line, the tragic irony is that they often no longer have the health, the physical energy, or even the desire to do the things they spent 40 years imagining they would do.
It makes me think of an analogy. It's like meticulously packing a massive, heavy suitcase for the vacation of a lifetime. You're putting in all this effort, buying the best gear, folding everything perfectly so it fits.
Squeezing that last pair of shoes in there.
Right. But then you just never actually call the cab to go to the airport. You just sit in your living room looking at this beautifully packed bag year after year until eventually you're just too tired to travel.
That is a perfect way to put it. You are optimizing for the packing, not the actual trip.
Yeah.
And that beautifully packed bag sitting in the living room, that ties directly into how this philosophy defines the true value of money. The text argues very strictly that money has absolutely no intrinsic worth.
It's just paper, right?
Right. It is literally just paper or digits on a screen.
Yeah.
Its only value is when it is actively converted into meaningful experiences. Money sitting untouched in a bank account is just latent energy. If it's never activated, it creates zero memories and zero joy.
Which brings up a really harsh warning from the source notes. There's this idea that the danger of endless saving is that people become, and this is a quote, experts at accumulation and beginners at living.
Ouch. Yeah.
I know people like this, like people who check their portfolio balance every single morning on their phone, but they haven't engaged in a new hobby or taken a real vacation in 5 years.
Yeah, they've mastered the mechanism of hoarding, basically, but they've completely atrophied their ability to actually enjoy the fruits of that labor.
Right.
They get stuck in this behavioral loop of delaying happiness. The problem with making accumulation your primary skill is that you literally forget how to spend money without feeling intense guilt.
You just keep delaying and delaying.
Exactly, until the clock simply runs out.
But wait, I have to push back here a little bit on behalf of everyone listening who's probably starting to sweat.
Fair enough.
Isn't saving just fundamentally responsible? Like, are we actually advocating for reckless spending here? Because
Yeah.
honestly, spending everything you have and just hoping for the best sounds like a terrifying recipe for eating cat food in your 80s.
Oh, totally. That is the natural fear, and it's a valid one. But dying with zero doesn't mean spending recklessly. It doesn't mean you should avoid investing, and it certainly doesn't mean ignoring your future survival needs.
Okay, good.
It really means shifting your entire framework to treat money strictly as a tool, not as the end goal itself. Like if you were a carpenter, you don't spend your whole life just collecting nicer and nicer hammers without ever actually building a house.
Right. That would be pointless.
Exactly. The realization here is that waiting forever to build the house carries a hidden, devastating cost.
Here's where the logic gets really fascinating to me. Because if money is just a tool meant to be converted into experiences, we can't just casually delay those experiences until we feel ready. We have to look at the physical realities of the human body.
Yeah, the biological clock just does not care about your bank balance.
It really doesn't.
We have to accept the reality that human health naturally declines. And it's not pessimism,
Yeah.
It's just a biological fact that our physical capacity shrinks as we age.
Right.
Wealth at age 85 simply doesn't matter as much as wealth at 35 because your body severely limits what you can actually do with that wealth. Health is your real wealth.
The source notes frame this around a concept called the peak experience curve. The core idea is that experiences have very real expiration dates. They aren't universally enjoyable at any random point on your timeline.
Yeah, the utility of an experience changes drastically based on your age.
The text gives some incredibly specific examples that really hit home for me. Like, think about staying in a bustling, noisy hostel while backpacking across Europe. At 22, that's an amazing adventure. At 65, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
I wouldn't want to do that now, let alone at 65.
Exactly. Or, learning to surf, climbing mountains, playing in a highly competitive local sports league.
Yeah, or even traveling with young children.
Oh, that's a big one.
Right. You can't put a 10-year-old child in a cryogenic freeze and then just wake them up when you are 65 and finally have the free time to take them on that big trip.
Wow, yeah.
That developmental window just closes forever. You can't safely learn to surf when your joints are deteriorating, right? Certain memories can only be created during specific physical periods of your life.
That makes a lot of sense.
So instead of just optimizing your financial portfolio, you basically have to actively optimize your life experiences before those physical windows shut.
Okay, I hear that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate again here.
Do it.
If we spend our money on these peak experiences now, while we are young and able-bodied, aren't we completely losing out on the magical power of compound interest?
Ah, the spreadsheet argument.
Right. The traditional financial advice is that a single dollar invested in the stock market today in your 20s could be worth $20 or $30 in retirement.
Yeah.
Spending it on a backpacking trip feels like setting future money on fire.
From a purely mathematical standpoint, on a spreadsheet, yes. You forfeit the financial compound interest of that specific dollar.
Right.
But there is a brilliant counter-concept presented in the text, which is this idea of investing in memories. What the financial spreadsheet fails to calculate is that human memories also pay dividends.
And I really want to dig into that phrase, memory dividends. How does a memory actually compound?
Well, think about the psychology of a truly incredible experience, right? Like that backpacking trip we mentioned. It doesn't just provide joy during the 2 weeks you were actually on the trip.
Right, it lasts longer.
Exactly. Years later, you still smile when you think about it. You tell stories to your friends at dinner parties. You frame photos for your wall. You bond with the people you traveled with over those shared inside jokes. Every single time you recall that experience, it yields a psychological payout.
It's basically the exact opposite of buying a material possession.
Spot on.
Like you buy a fancy new car and the thrill wears off in a few months as it just becomes your daily commute vehicle. It depreciates in value. But peak experiences become the defining stories of your identity. They actually become more valuable over time.
And if you take that trip at 25, You get 60 years of memory dividends paying out over your entire lifetime.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. If you wait until you are 75 to take the exact same trip, you only get 5 or 10 years of those dividends. The lifelong return on investment for early experiences is something a mutual fund simply cannot replicate.
That makes total sense. And knowing that our physical health fades and that these memory dividends compound over time, our discussion logically shifts to the ultimate currency, the one thing we absolutely cannot earn more of, which is time.
Yes.
We have to fundamentally reevaluate the exchange rate between our time and our money.
There is a really powerful thought experiment in the source material that perfectly illustrates how warped our relationship with time actually is.
Let's hear it.
Imagine someone comes up to you and says they will give you $1 million tax-free in a briefcase right now.
Okay, I'm listening.
But the catch is you have to instantly give up 10 years of your life.
Wow. No, I wouldn't take that deal for $1 billion.
Almost no one would.
Right. Because deep down in our bones, we know that our time on this earth is vastly more valuable than any amount of money.
We all know it instinctively. And yet, if you look at how people actually behave in the real world, there is this stark, almost tragic contradiction.
How so?
Well, every single day, people trade enormous amounts of their highly limited time for surplus money they will never actually spend. It's a completely irrational exchange rate.
When you put it like that, it really is.
You can always figure out a way to earn another dollar. But every missed birthday, every delayed dream, every Tuesday you spent sitting in a cubicle instead of being with your family, those hours are permanently gone.
Which brings us to what I think is the heaviest, most chilling realization in all of the source material. The text points out that every unused dollar you leave behind when you die represents precious time that you traded working, but never actually enjoyed.
You have to just let that sink in for a moment. It completely reframes the whole concept of leftover wealth.
It really does.
It isn't just a surplus of cash. A massive bank account at the end of your life is actually a deficit of lived time.
It's your own life energy.
Yeah.
Like you probably spent hours doing stressful work, dealing with a terrible commute, managing office politics, all to earn pieces of paper that you never converted back into joy or utility. You essentially crystallized your finite time into money and then just left it on the table. It's haunting.
Haunting is the perfect word for it.
But practically speaking, how do we fix this? If the goal isn't just endless accumulation, and we accept that dying with a massive unused bank account is basically a failure to optimize our time, how do we actually know when to stop hoarding? Because the terror of running out of money in old age is very, very real.
Oh, of course. And that fear is exactly what drives the endless saving loop in the first place. The ambient anxiety of the unknown just makes us hoard.
Right.
So the solution the text offers is to actively know your number. It encourages a practice that surprisingly few people actually sit down and do, which is realistically calculating exactly how much money you will need to survive your later years.
Because usually people just aim for more.
And more is an infinite, totally unquantifiable target. If your goal is just more, you will never hit it, which means you will never give yourself permission to stop working and start living. But when you actually do the math, factoring in that your physical ability to spend money actively declines as you age, you arrive at a specific number.
Okay.
You might realize your spending will actually drop significantly in your 80s because you'll primarily be at home.
Right, you're not going on ski trips.
Exactly. And once you understand your actual baseline financial needs, something profound happens. You remove that shadowy fear of the future. You gain permission to enjoy your surplus wealth right now, totally guilt-free. Financial planning shifts from a game of maximizing your net worth to a game of maximizing your life.
That is a massive paradigm shift. And what I find so interesting is that once you know your number and you stop hoarding out of this vague terror, it completely changes your outward behavior.
Oh, completely.
Specifically, the text notes, it changes how you handle risk and how you treat the people you love.
Let's look at the risk aspect first, because that's huge. Traditional financial advice often applies a sort of blanket risk tolerance to everyone, or suggests you just slowly dial it back. But the underlying philosophy here explains that when you are young, your greatest asset is not your money.
Right.
Your greatest asset is your time.
Because you have the runway to recover.
Precisely.
Like if you're 25 and you take a massive risk, say you sink your savings into starting a business or you move across the world for a new career and you completely fail and go to absolute zero, You still have 4 decades to recover. You can learn new skills, get a new job, and rebuild.
But as you grow older, that equation flips.
Yeah?
Your time shrinks, meaning your ability to recover from a total financial loss pretty much disappears.
Right.
So your financial decisions and your risk strategy must organically evolve with your season of life. You should be taking bigger swings early on when your time wealth is high and protecting your capital later when your time wealth is low.
And viewing your life through that specific timeline perspective completely upends the traditional idea of a legacy, too. We usually think of a legacy or, an inheritance as this really big, impressive number being read off by a lawyer in a stuffy room after a funeral.
The author challenges that deeply emotional assumption, asking parents a very, very uncomfortable question.
Which is?
When do your children actually need the money most? If you are endlessly saving to leave a massive inheritance, you are optimizing for the wrong timeline entirely.
The examples in the source material make so much intuitive sense. Children do not need a massive cash injection when they're 60 years old, which is typically when their parents might pass away.
Right.
By age 60, their lives are largely established. Their mortgages might be paid off. They needed that financial help back when they were 30.
Age 30 is when the friction of life is highest. That's when people are trying to scrape together a down payment for a first home. They're trying to afford skyrocketing daycare costs while balancing entry-level salaries.
Yeah, the stress is at its absolute peak.
Right. They might want to take the risk to start a business, but feel completely paralyzed by student debt. The utility of a dollar given to a 30-year-old is exponentially higher than that same dollar given to a 6-year-old.
Absolutely.
Giving that money earlier creates a vastly bigger impact on the actual trajectory of their entire life.
But again, my instinct here is to worry about vulnerability. Doesn't giving away your money earlier in life leave you incredibly exposed? Like, what if you need it for specialized medical care?
That's a valid concern, but this is exactly why knowing your number is the foundation of all of this. Giving while you are alive doesn't mean giving away the money you realistically need to survive and cover your care.
Okay, so you protect your baseline first.
Exactly. It means identifying the surplus, the money you are inevitably going to leave behind anyway, and distributing it when it can do the absolute most good. And beyond the practical impact on your kids, there is a beautiful, almost selfish benefit to doing this.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. You actually get to see someone benefit from your generosity. You basically get the memory dividends of your own giving.
Exactly. Think about the emotional difference. Watching your child thrive in a house that you helped them buy, being able to physically sit in their living room and watch your grandchildren play, is worth far more to your own happiness than leaving them an automated check after you are gone.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
You actually get to participate in the joy that your wealth created.
So if we step back and look at this whole philosophy, it really boils down to redefining 3 core things.
Let's hear them.
First, that money exists solely to improve the quality of your life, not simply to increase a high score on a bank balance.
Right.
Second, that active experiences are what create compounding, lasting happiness, whereas passive material objects usually just don't.
And third, the absolute rarest, most precious resource we possess isn't money at all. It's time.
That last point is really the anchor of everything we've discussed today. Your life account is quietly decreasing every single day, whether you notice it or not. It's true.
We have to fundamentally redefine our cultural metric for success. Success isn't the size of the estate you leave behind. It is the richness of the memories you made, the depth of the relationships you fostered, the adventures you didn't postpone, and the lives you actively improved while you were still here to see it.
Because in the end, literally no one stands around at a funeral marveling at how efficiently you maximized your compound interest. They remember the life you actually lived.
Exactly. The goal isn't to be the richest person in the cemetery. The goal is to make sure your money served you in creating a life that was fully utilized and deeply felt.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Earlier, we discussed that heavy realization that every unused dollar left behind represents precious time you traded working, but never actually enjoyed.
The unlived time.
Exactly. If an unspent dollar is essentially crystallized, unlived time, I want you to mentally audit your savings right now. Think about the surplus you are holding on to just out of habit. What specific time-sensitive experience in your life are you implicitly choosing not to have today in exchange for a theoretical tomorrow that is never guaranteed? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, time is your greatest asset. We'll catch you on the next one.